Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Max, your host for Lab Insider. Welcome to another episode dealing with the innovations behind the laboratory and the people working inside them. Joining us is Brouwer. He works at AstraZeneca and as a digital lab capability leader with a background in IT with AstraZeneca for the last 18 years. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Robin, it's great to have you here. I think in order to sort of give a little bit of context to what we're going to talk about today, because we are going to focus heavily on lab digitization. If you don't mind, tell us a little bit about your background, what you've been doing these past 2 decades.
So I joined AstraZeneca 18 years ago. I've always worked in IT across R&D, including late-stage development areas and clinical regulatory. In the past 8 years within research, started out as a developer, been an architect, project manager, business partner, and now I am the digital lab capability leader. So basically anything that happens in the lab from an IT perspective, be it projects or services, is my accountability. And with our digital lab capability, we're trying to improve the efficiency as a priority area for us, and it really significant time back to the science, driven by optimizing experimental workflows, deploying automation, and ensuring ultimately that our scientists are fully equipped and supported.
So giving them the facilities and the support that they need. You've mentioned 3 pillars of lab digitization. These are data, scientists, and space.
Yep. This is our 3 pillars, 3 focus areas that we're zooming in on. If we look at where we are today towards a more digitally assisted science and an optimized lab, we focused on 3 areas. One is the scientists. So how can we increase productivity through digital-enabled lab workflows? That's one pillar. Second pillar is our data. So there's an awful lot of data being produced as the engine of R&D, and our remit is to increase the throughput and the quality of that data from source, and reducing manual human intervention. And then the third pillar is what we call our optimized labs. This is increasing the amount of research we do within our footprint. So we have a lot of assets, be it people, be it instruments, be it physical labs. How can we increase the amount of research we do within that footprint? So those are sort of the 3 pillars, and everything we do, any activity, any investment, any business case, we try to align this to any of these 3 pillars. And really question ourselves, is this propelling us in the right direction or not? There's obviously an awful lot of ideas in the labs, but if it doesn't align to any of these, then we probably shouldn't do it. So that's how we use this as a bit of a framework as well to guide our investments and what we should prioritize.
Digitization in general, it's been a bit of a bumpy road, but the last 20 years, things have changed for the better. People are really sharing information.
I think so. I think if when I started in AstraZeneca, we were that open or not open at all about, all from what we're working on, even within IT, I would say. We were quite closed in terms of what technologies we were looking at, what kind of products, and very rarely would we, even in a pre-competitive setting, we wouldn't do and share much. I think that has, now propelled 20 years forward. I think it's the opposite. We've turned it inside out, basically, and we are, in sessions like these, quite openly sharing what we're investing in, what we're maybe have some learnings to share. And I think that's absolutely needed. I mean, you touched upon a topic called data, and how do you ensure that for instance, an instrument that's outputting some data, how do we ensure that it follows some kind of standards, that the right metadata is attached to it? We can drive that question internally, but actually it's in the interest of the industry as a whole that we all drive those questions. So I think there's a whole bunch of benefits that we get with speaking a lot more open about what we think the priorities ought to be.
With industry in general, because you're saying that, yeah, there was once upon a time when the likes of AstraZeneca and other companies wouldn't share information. They wouldn't talk about this. They kept the cards close to the chest. What happened? I mean, did people just start talking casually, and then eventually management just decided, oh, you know what? Okay, maybe we won't consider that a secret anymore. So what exactly do you think happened?
My opinion and my view, but I think the industry realized that this, we couldn't, particularly AstraZeneca, our pipeline wasn't, looking good basically, and finding a new way to reset and to rethink, and my view is it's led to the insight that we can't do this on our own only. We need to collaborate with others. We need to get insights from others and learn. And that has, once the science units have started with that obviously reached our IT departments as well. So I think we just completely shifted as well. And it makes it a bit more exciting as well, to be honest. Just on a personal level, trying to find out what the latest trends are and how can I contribute to that. It makes it so much more exciting as well. So, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. So I think it's a nicer working environment as well, to be honest.
So what might be the things that people haven't been sharing in the past and are openly discussing now during conferences and impromptu meetings?
We're quite open about partners we are working with, be it which ELN providers we have or which LIN systems we're using, and in terms of investments we're making, what projects we're running. I've personally done a number of sessions on various conferences about lab of the future and what I think that looks like. So I think it's stuff like that really helps us to test, because obviously what we're hoping for is people saying, "Well, actually, I've got some learnings for you that I'm now going to share with you," or something that says, "Well, actually, we tested this; it doesn't work." You want to get some kind of interaction going and new connections that you make with peers in the industry. So I think it's testing your thoughts a bit, creating new connections, and then obviously we have a fair bit of vendors and suppliers that we work with. I think that's also very useful to get. You have a specific set that you tend to work with, but the more you open up, other vendors reach out to you and say, "Actually, we believe we should have a piece of the pie, and we have something to offer in this particular area that you're talking about. So please talk to us." So I think that it all helps to inspire you and create some new ideas, perhaps, and things you haven't thought about.
In general, when it comes to really, when it comes to sharing, when it comes to information, there is one what we can call the lifeblood of the scientific industries: access to data among companies, among different different stakeholders. Is a bit it can be a bit difficult if it is formatted differently. If there is vendor locking, we've discussed this with Felipe Albrecht from Roche. I understand that we are moving towards an interdependency. What are your views on that?
I mean, there's a certain level of plumbing that is absolutely needed to digitize our labs. So it's all the way from an instrument that's outputting some data towards making that accessible in your favorite analytical programs. Fair bit to go still. How do you timely do that? So there's something around the movement of data and moving it, sometimes quite vast amount of data. How do you do that in a timely fashion? So that's one aspect to it. The other aspect is there's many tools, and the tools keep on changing as well and evolving. So how do we think about the formats in which we store that data so that we can hook up various tools to it? So that talks a lot about standards and metadata, and not those are boring but needed topics. So I think that and then there's the whole workflow piece to it.
Yes.
It's not just an instrument, but actually the scientist is this particular workflow, and that connects a number of instruments, data, analytical tools all together that need to work together.
We've spoken about the sort of the motivations behind sharing and transparency.
Yep.
Industry can benefit, yes. And there are monetary objectives. Everyone stands to benefit eventually when workflows and when processes become optimized. But there is the regulatory environment. They also play a big role. They have pushed industry.
Yeah, I think it's one of the forces that has mandated certain formats, and perhaps that is that helps in one way to it's not a question any longer. It's mandated. So if that happens earlier in the research space as well, in terms of how we are supposed to submit information or how are we supposed to share information, I think that will drive a need to adopt standards or to define standards if they don't exist yet. We see this happen. There are a number of these standard bodies like Allotrope that have been in sort of my sphere of interest that have existed for some time, and I think that's useful, but also perhaps needs it might need something else as well to really propel us. If
What do you think that might be that we need?
Yeah, it's a good question. I was hesitant to critique because it's not meant to be a critique, but if you look at the facts, I mean, how long has those standard bodies existed, and how far have we got? You could, from a business perspective, just look at it. Well, that's not very far, guys. What else is needed, as you rightly ask?
Yeah,
and it might be that the pharma industry just needs to we need to come together and put our foot down a bit stronger. That might be one way of thinking about it. That's or there needs to be some other external body that starts to mandate certain things. But that's unlikely in the early stages. So yeah.
When it comes to scientists in general, just the lab worker in general, I want to hear a little bit about how the conditions under which lab workers work. Because at the beginning of our chat, you stated, lab workers are being assisted by tech, but at the same time, with more tech aiding us in our current jobs, our job description changes across the board. I was just wondering your opinion. Do you think lab technicians are facing increased pressure? Are conditions getting better, or are they getting worse?
Well, certainly at AstraZeneca, I think we have a great focus on what we call a great place to work. So it's important for us to attract talent, keep talent, to develop talent. And that doesn't matter if you're in the lab or in the office or where you sit. That is across all of AstraZeneca. So I think if you then zoom in on to the lab specifically, if there's if we're talking about the skills that are needed for the future, I definitely think that whole database requires skills that are a bit different than maybe what not all of lab science, but some of the lab scientists have not been used to. All the way from some very basic data skills on how you structure data, how do you wrangle data, what tools do we use to visualize the data. I think those will become part of the actual curriculum when we train a new chemist or a biologist.
These sound like prerequisites to positions today.
Yep.
But are they being taught? Because you're implying that should be in the curriculum. Is there a wide enough knowledge gap that makes it challenging to find people?
Well, it's hard, right? We're talking about people and cultures, and so I think there's that. I mean, absolutely. Internally, we have a fantastic setup of internal learning tools, and it's promoted, and a part of your development plan. So I think we're making all efforts with carrots rather than sticks to say, hey, come on, look here. There's some exciting stuff here to learn, and this is how it will benefit you. So I think that you need to have individuals that are truly interested in that and pick that up and say yes, I see that why that is important for my future and how I can contribute to the company's goals by adopting some new skills and learning some new skills. So I think the surrounding sort of prerequisites and frameworks are in place.
Do you see a shift in the way we're using our lab spaces right now? In the way that maybe, I'll add context, offices are being downsized all over the globe. Why? Because we're working remotely. So the way that these spaces are being sold, being used, much different than it was 3 years ago. Do you notice anything like that with the laboratories in general?
Absolutely, we see. Our company has returned to growth, so that comes with new investments in the labs, in people, and in new technologies. So that's good news. But we do have the labs that we have, and this is why we've made it one of the focus areas. How do you get more from those spaces and those assets that we already have? So we've got a number of, tools that give some insights or data points that give insights. So, for instance, on the instrument side, how are we utilizing the instruments, and how do we perhaps co-locate them so that you create a center of excellence? So we've been quite vocal and are proud of our Lab for Life project here in Gothenburg in Sweden, where we've transformed our labs and built centers of excellence to co-locate instruments, but also people that use those instruments then meet at a place of mutual interest. So those are some of the things we're doing to optimize how we use the space. Just looking at utilization of the space, looking at the utilization of the assets, co-locating of the assets and people. And there's some really interesting, insights that you can draw. Once you start to collect that information, you can start to dive into deeper discussions around, if an instrument is not being utilized, why is that?
The silence is loud as well, right?
Yeah. And how do you, if you overlay that with our service contracts, the maintenance contracts, it's not cheap to run labs. How does that marry up to the utilization, and why is that? And if we're asking for a new mass spec, are we actually utilizing the mass specs that we already have? It's those types, and those are difficult discussions, right? Because you can't just look blindly at some graphs from a utilization perspective. There's always a story behind it, but that's better to have with the data than without the data, because it becomes too anecdotal otherwise. So I think it's those are some of the steps that we're taking. We had to build a booking system as well. So when you co-locate, obviously, and it's not me and my instrument any longer, it's an instrument that is shared, a shared economy model. Then you need some way to simply book those instruments as well. So we've invested in some tooling to make that happen as well.
I guess if I can end our discussion on any positive note, I think things are looking bright. Things are looking up.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited about the digital transformation. I'm impatient, so I always like it to go quicker. But I think it's great with the data and AI revolution, and it's propelling us and automation in there. It's very exciting times.
Robin, is there anything else that you'd like to tell our listeners, our viewers here at Lab Insider?
No, not really. Thanks for having me. Happy to share and for people to reach out to me on LinkedIn if anything didn't make sense. And like I said in one of your questions or answers to your questions was I like to have a dialogue. So people feel free to reach out to me and have a chat, be it competitors, be it peers, be it suppliers or vendors.
Thank you, Robin, very much.
Thank you.
That was Robin Brouwer, Digital Lab Capability Leader for AstraZeneca. Be sure to subscribe to our newsletter for an extended version of this episode, as well as liking us on LinkedIn and Facebook. Well, that's all for now. For any more information, check us out on www.labinsider.com. Thanks, everyone, and take care.